Joining me today to discuss industrial cybersecurity is Duncan Greatwood, who's the CEO of Xage. Welcome, Duncan.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
To start this off, cybersecurity spans a broad spectrum of technologies and things. So can you kind of just frame where Xage fits into that market?
Sure. So we like to say that we're doing zero trust for real world operations. And both halves of that statement matter quite a bit. Zero trust is a buzzword right now, but we mean something very specific by it. We mean that we're going to bring control over what's happening in your operation and a new level of control that hasn't really existed before. You can think of what we do as overlaying your existing operation, so you don't have to change too much at all. But we're making it so that before a user can access a machine, before an application can read a data stream, it has to authenticate itself, or the user has to authenticate themselves, and then we will make sure that they're authorized to access that machine or that data stream. And in the past, cybersecurity in operations has really been about, we'll build a big hard perimeter around your system, we'll have some layers of security, which is good, the Purdue model people talk about, and maybe some coarse segmentation as well. Instead of doing that, we're kind of saying, you know what, that's great that you build that high perimeter fence, but the reality is the bad guys are going to get on your network from time to time, and we're there to make sure that when they do, they can't hack into your machines, they can't close down your operation. So access control, data security, remote access, all of those things we're providing inside that operational world.
Okay. Just a question, I find a lot of companies seem to be struggling to maintain their security.
Yeah.
Do you see the same thing, number one? And if so, what do you see as the major challenges that people are having, and what can you do to help them?
Sure. So definitely it's true that people are struggling. Some companies have high level of expertise. Honestly, even those companies are struggling a little bit. Some companies, they're struggling even to hire the experts to advise them to what they should be doing.
Everyone.
But whichever end of the spectrum you're on, I think there's a lot of change happening in that operational cybersecurity world right now. Part of the point of bringing strong access control, it's actually a kind of simplification for people. Right now, they're dealing with a patchwork of different solutions. They have to configure their firewalls in complex ways. They are, running things called jump boxes. They're running remote sessions. They're doing VPNs, a mismatch of VPNs actually. So when you bring a zero trust approach, you actually can discard a lot of that complexity, and you adopt more like a single sign-on for the operation. The user has to sign in once, or the application. The user signing in once, then we'll show them what they get access to. We figure out how to connect to that system or prevent them connecting to that system if they're not supposed to. It also allows the OT and IT groups to work together a little more effectively, I think. People can agree in advance what the policy should be, and then it's our job to enforce those policies. Versus right now, the IT people, they don't really know what's happening in OT, and yeah. The OT people, they don't, they're hearing from IT, you should do this, you should do that, but it doesn't necessarily apply in that OT world. And so by bringing this structure that's kind of predefined, we call it overlay, or call it a mesh or a fabric if you want to use a little more technical term, but we're able to bring that identity-based approach and really make it simpler for people to manage their operation. A lot of the technical complexity is hidden inside of our product as opposed to them having to try and configure it manually.
Now you mentioned a mesh. Is that how your zero trust? I mean, zero trust is a lot of people talk about zero trust,
yeah.
But just to clarify how your zero trust is different or unique or better, I'll just say
that's certainly one of the ways. So the mesh can go inside the operation itself, so it's not just stuck out in the cloud. It can maybe stretch out to the cloud, but its heart is inside the operation. And the mesh gives us a level of redundancy, both just for the function of the mesh, but also even cyber-wise. If one little piece of the mesh was to get hacked by attackers, the rest of the mesh can continue to protect the operation. And so there's no kind of single point of cyber failure. There's a much higher level of resilience with those mesh kind of approaches, such as we have. We also have taken a lot of care to allow the mesh to protect legacy equipment of many different kinds. Of course, in operations, 90% of stuff is legacy. It's the reality of it. So, there are machines there with no password, or machines there perhaps that have insecure passwords. And for those kind of systems, we can bring them up to date, as it were, and give them really strong modern protection with multi-factor authentication, whatever else they need to do in their environment, without having to rip and replace everything. Of course, ripping and replacing is very expensive, but it may be impractical, impossible almost for many, many operations. We're also keen to overlay not just the legacy operating equipment, but also the legacy networks as well. So we can help. We have a feature called multi-hop that lets us get in and out of the operation step by step through the layers of the operation. And so we can get data in and out safely, again, without people having to rip up their existing network architectures or existing workflows. So for all of those reasons, it is a zero trust process, but it's a zero trust process that really has its heart and soul in the operational, the OT environment, and it's going to work super well with the environments that people have.
Okay. A lot of end users tell me they'd like to drive more convergence between IT and OT. Is that something that you see, and is that something you support?
Yeah, definitely. Our mesh will often spread from OT, DMZ, IT, even into cloud or local data centers. And it's one of the sort of secret sources of Xage, I think, that we help the OT and IT people finally to get along, whereas perhaps they didn't always do that in the past. Firstly, it makes it easier just to work together once you have this system that you can define policies centrally and distribute them out to the fields wherever you need to go. But it's also allowing data to be secure end to end. So you may have applications running in IT that are doing complex analytics and all kinds of other things. We allow that data to flow right from the factory floor or the refinery floor or the pipeline into IT safely, backwards and forwards, and with confidentiality and integrity of the data assured end to end. So we're definitely helping to enable those sort of more IT-centric digital transformation projects to actually happen safely and to happen in a practical way that doesn't take forever to kind of set up and make happen.
Yeah. Very interesting. Just one closing question. A lot of companies I talk to, some people struggle to justify cybersecurity investments for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything you do to try to help them, or is there a way using Xage makes it easier for them? Or?
Sure, I think so. I mean, in our customer set, we're probably growing 3 or 4x annual basis at the moment. There's a lot of demand, so we don't necessarily have to kind of just be justifying ourselves always. Most of our customers know that they need additional help, but we do keep a measure of attacks that they've suffered that we've blocked. So obviously that's one very direct way of justifying investment. It's also justified because we're probably a tenth of the cost of swapping out all of your gear for more secure gear. We can protect the legacy as well, as we talked about. We're perhaps 100th of the cost of paying a ransomware or something of that kind, which is exactly the kind of attack that we stop. And in addition to those sort of cyber hardening justifications, we actually help the operation run better as well. So work that before might have taken a site visit, now people can do that remotely and securely. We'll save you on a truck roll. We'll make it easier to bring in that one expert who understands that system very well, bring them in for half an hour remotely, do their work, and then leave again. We also make it easier to share data even with customers and partners where that makes sense. So it's certainly cost effective to not be hacked. I think everybody kind of recognizing that. But it's also good to kind of underpin the changes that people are making in their operations, whether that's oil and gas pipelines, manufacturing. One of our largest customers is the US Space Force, for instance, where they're kind of protecting all their satellite equipment. So, from the most workaday stuff to the most advanced tech, you can actually help the operations run better in addition to protecting them better.
Well, wonderful talking to you today, Duncan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sid. It was my pleasure.
We've been speaking with Duncan Greatwood, who's the CEO of Xage. Thank you for watching.